Hello, morning. Let us continue with the topic. So we were discussing about different algorithms in the previous class, previous session. And after discussing various algorithms, we have discussed how we can select the best or best suitable disk scheduling algorithm for our usage. We have seen FCFS, SSTF, scan, cscan, and look. These are the scheduling algorithms we already discussed. And later we discussed about disk management, how we can manage with the disk via selecting low level formatting or physical formatting, and then how we can partition is nothing but as a logical formatting. So these are the things we already discussed. So one thing please remember, so if you have more than one operating system in a single machine, so you might have installed operating system in separated drives. Consider if you have a basically if you are making use of Windows, you might have installed Windows operating system in C drive. Again, if you want to have Linux operating system, you might have installed in D drive. So now to go ahead with these things, you need a bootstrap loader or bootloader. In general, we may make use of the term bootloader or bootstrap loader. So this will identify the blocks for a partition and it will boot up in the initial pages. So here this particular image describes you how that partition is managed. So over here you can see, if you follow my cursor on the screen, partition 1, partition 2, partition 3, and partition 4. So these are the 4 partitions already available in my hard disk. So MBR will have a small amount of metadata description about the data, which comprises boot code and partition table. For example, if you are installed Windows 2000, according to this particular example, in partition 3, then there should be a path in the backend that is loaded via the bootloader, that is boot partition. And if you are installed Linux, you might have installed in partition 1 or partition 2, then you must have an entry in that partition table, so that while booting up your device, you will get those 2 prompts on the screen. So then you may select any one option via moving your mouse pointer or cursor, then the particular selected operating system is loaded to your machine. So till here we completed in the last discussion. So today we are going to discuss about swap space management. So this particular terminology, swap space, is used when you wanted to swap the memory space between primary position to secondary position, or position 1 to position 2, or anywhere. So in general, we may use this particular terminology when we need with the virtual memory, when we make use of virtual memory to run a bigger application, bigger in the sense which consumes larger memory space, larger clock speed or higher clock speed, it consumes more process speed. So then we may go with this swap space management. Right now or currently in market, we are getting higher amount of storage capacity disks for a less price. In generally, we may say for a cheaper price, we'll get a large amount of storage. So in that means, in that sense, this swap space management is not not entertained right now, because we already have enough space in our hard disk. So swap space is majorly used when the particular operating system needs an extra space to manage with its processes. So in general, it uses disk space as an extension of main memory. For example, if you have more than one operating system in your machine, so your main memory is limited, say for example 2 GB, so that is not sufficient. So then what it will take is virtual memory, whatever you assign while doing initial partitioning. So that is grabbed by that. So that is what we call swap space. How it is working, for example, we'll see one example over here. So right now in the market, we are getting a highest or the memory capacity is increased in the disk, so it is very less in use. So it can be carved out of the normal file system, or more commonly it can be a separate disk partition. In generally we may call it as raw. So if you observe, if you go to a BIOS setup in your operating system, or while partitioning initially the hard disk, you can clearly observe this particular separate disk partition that is used for this kind of facility, swap space management. When there is a immediate space requirement, that is for timing, like a buffer is not permanent. However, you can make use of that particular memory area whenever there is a need for a highest transitions, which needs highest calculations, which needs highest processing, which needs to store intermediate data during execution. So at that time, this will be utilized, swap space management. In general, while installing operating system at first in your hard disk, if you have already familiar with the partitioning, automatically the OS itself designates some space for this particular setup, say swap space management. So when you have to say compress a particular partition, then you may get this particular swap space management with a clear understanding picture. Then, so coming to swap space management parts, it's nothing but it will allocate swap space when process starts and holds text segment. There is nothing but a program and data segment. So now you observe, please follow my cursor on the screen. We have used two terminology, text segment and data segment. So if you recall your microprocessor class, say we have implemented some of the microprocessor programs, that is assembly level programming, assembly level language. So in which the memory can be divided into text segment, code segment, data segment, extra segment, and so on and so things. The segment is nothing but a storage space. So now text segment will hold all your programs. Data segment will hold only the data. Consider for an example, you have written a program to add two numbers using assembly level language. So to declare, we need 2 to 3 variables. One variable to hold number one, second variable to hold another number, then one more variable to display the result. So now, by considering this particular program, the data segment is nothing but which is having the value of number one, number two, and the total. So those are the three data we wanted to store in our memory. Then coming to the text segment part, the entire program, starting from the accepting the data or initializing the data, then you're using it for processing, then you're supposed to display it. So this particular entire part program is stored in text segment. So now what happens is when the process starts, process in the sense you're supposed to compile your program, the compilation is successful, you are generating obj file, that obj file should be converted to exe file, nothing but you're running the program. So now this is the process. So executing a particular program, when this execution starts, automatically there is a swap space management occur. So what is that swap space? So we'll go with this particular example, adding two numbers. So in between, after the initial lines, you declare two numbers. The number should be received from the data segment because it is already loaded into data segment. So during this particular process, whenever we say a plus b or number one total equal to number one plus number two, if this is a statement, number one will hold number one value, number two will number two will hold second number, and total will hold the summation. So now while calling this number one plus number two, so we are getting the data from data segment. So now there is a swap. The data is swap get received from data segment and used in the process. Similarly, second number, and after calculation we'll get a total value. So now during this particular process, the machine should get those numbers. So now to perform this particular process, if there is a large space is needed for the calculation, for the summation, then we may capture some amount of virtual memory for this particular usage. This is what we call swap space management. After the calculation, we are supposed to release this memory. We must release the memory. So now, in general, kernel, OS kernel uses swap maps to track swap space usage. Coming to Solaris 2 operating system, which will allocate swap space only when a dirty page is forced out of physical memory. What is dirty page? It's nothing but it will have some invalid values. So when that particular dirty page is forced out of physical memory, not when the virtual memory page is first created. So only in this particular context, swap space is used in Solaris 2. Nothing but file data return to swap space until write to file system is requested. Is something like, for example, say you have a pen in left hand, you wanted to transmit, in left hand you have a pen, right hand you have a pencil. So you wanted to swap these two positions of pen and pencil. So nothing but you're supposed to change pencil to left hand, pen to right hand. So now what happens is, for this swapping, you suppose needed some more extra space so that you can keep for a while. This particular mechanism is swapping using another, is nothing but this management. So now we'll have a question. What if a system runs out of swap space? What will happen? So in general, the swap space is nothing but it will grab some amount of space from virtual memory. If the virtual memory runs out of space, then what to do? Or what will happen? You may get some messages on the screen, or the program may take more time to execute, or it may alert you to manage with the space. And few machines, some systems allow multiple swap spaces. So here you can see a small example for swapping on Linux machine, Linux systems. So in bottom, you can see a small table kind of thing. So 10301. So this is swap map. On top of that, we have swap partition or swap file. So consider this as a whole as a swap area. So swap maps job is to maintain or monitor the swapping procedure. For example, initially consider page slot 1, this one must be swapped for time being. So swap map will have an entry for that. Similarly, 0. So second time, no need of usage. Third time, there is a use. So now we have some data structure which will have this particular capability, providing space for usage and then we accessing. So for example, we may relate this particular swap space with the allocation and deallocation of memory. Allocation, you're supposed to allocate a particular memory for a particular usage. Once it is done, or once the usage of memory space is over, then you're supposed to release it back. So we know these things, memory allocation and deallocation, with respect to C or C++, malloc, calloc, free. So these are the built-in functions. On the other hand, system calls, right? So this particular topic you can relate with. Then we have something called RAID. This is one of the important topic. So right now, we are right now in the market, EMC Square, one of the leading from front. Those are very much familiar with this. Those are very much implementing this RAID. Even with respect to our syllabus, we are following the book which is prepared by them, EMC Square. RAID structure, we'll see one by one. There are around 5 RAID types is supposed to follow. So RAID is nothing but redundant array of independent disks. There is a full form. Redundant array of independent disks. We'll see that one in detail. So which is nothing but which will have a storage, multiple storage of multiple disk drives, provides reliability via redundancy. Nothing but is supposed to duplicate the data in all the disks. That is general meaning about this one. So one RAID or one set of RAID is nothing but set of number of disks. For example, if you consider your own machine, say desktop, so you can have two individual hard disks. So in which one individual hard disk may be treated as primary, another one treated as secondary. So this is a set. So more than two, if you have, it will be treated as an array. So you'll have number of disks like that, number of 1 TB storage, more than 100 in a large company, or might or Google or some other company, those who are using for service, using as a service provider. Then how to keep track of this data? So each disk will have copy, so that if one disk fails, automatically the disk controller will fetch those data from the other drive. We'll see in detail about this one. So what is the advantage? So it will provide reliability, it will increase mean time to failure, and it will combine with the NVRAM to improve write performance, and it is arranged in 6 different levels. We'll see in detail about this particular part. So along with the continuation with that, the RAID setup will make use of disk striping, uses a group of disks as one storage unit. Say consider you have 100 individual disks. So you can divide 10 each in a group so that you can have a strip. Striping is used for a particular group of disks as one storage unit. Similarly, we can have a mirroring. So you can copy paste, something like say with respect to copy paste control A, control C, control V. You're copying your selection and pasted it. So nothing but you're supposed to follow either source formatting or destination formatting. So here mirroring is nothing but a similar concept. You're supposed to copy entire thing from one disk to another. On the other hand, we may call it as shadowing from one disk to another disk, just replication. So supposed to create a duplicate. So this is one of the possibility with the RAID 1. So RAID 1 is a one type of RAID setup which will have mirroring. Nothing but say if you have 10 number of disks, all the 10 disks will have same copies of a file, so that data duplication is maintained. Only thing over here is, so if one particular disk is failed, automatically the second disk will take over the charge and continue with the processing. Then we have something called striped mirrors. There is combination of RAID 1 and 0, RAID 1 plus 0, or mirrored stripes, RAID 0 plus 1, provides high performance and high reliability. We'll see about this one also. So RAID 0, nothing but group of disks as a single storage. RAID 1 is nothing but mirroring or shadowing. RAID 1 plus 0 is combination of both striping and mirroring. RAID 1 plus 0 in the sense mirroring will happen first, then you're supposed to group the disks with respect to mirrored stripes. RAID 0 plus 1 is supposed to group number of disks, then you're supposed to mirror it, copy it. Then we have something called RAID 4, 5 and 6. That is block interleaved parity, supposed to make use of parity bit. This is for security reasons. We'll see that also in detail. And then RAID within a storage array can still fail if the array fails. So automatic replication of the data between arrays is common. So what I mean by this particular terminology is, point is, if one particular disk is failed, automatically the data replication. So whenever you fix a new disk, when you buy and when you purchase a new disk and you put it in the previous position, disk position, automatically we have a program, data replication program, that is readily available. So that program will copy all the data from the other disk, so that replication is maintained. Because RAID's job is to basic job is to maintain a copy. So now then we have something called hot spare. A small number of hot spare disks are left unallocated. So this hot spare, in the sense, your program is under execution, and in between the execution, some disk is failed to load, or some disk is failed with its write operation. Automatically, other disk will carry over the task where it was stopped, and you're supposed to insert a new disk in that particular position. Still your machine is running, still your program is under execution. So this particular task is called as hot spare. So it will automatically replace a failed disk and having a data rebuilt onto them. So here you can see a small diagrammatic representation. RAID 0, non-redundant striping, you are supposed to group it. RAID 1, mirrored disks. So you can observe over here, C, it is a copy of this. RAID 2, for the RAID 2 setup, we need error correcting codes, nothing but parity. So what we do in this case is, I guess you understood the previous concept. If you want, I'll just brief once again. RAID 0, there is no duplication, there is no data duplication. Individual disk will have its own separate program. Say over here, according to the diagram, you have 4 disks. So each disk will not have duplication. Each disk will have its own data. So now the problem or demerit of this particular setup is, if one disk failed, it is very difficult to retrieve the data from first disk. And coming to the RAID 1, is supposed to copy it. So here you can see with respect to RAID 1, you can see C. There is a C is nothing but to represent copy. So we have a copy of replica of this particular disk, this, and so on. So these 4 disks are nothing but replica of these initial 4 setup. Then we have something called RAID 2, that is memory style error correcting codes. So over here, these 3 disks will be kept ready to maintain with if something happens, if something goes wrong, nothing but error checking codes, parity bits. That's why the representation P is shown here. Consider 1, 2, 3, 4 disks over here. So the replication is maintained, and if something happens, what should be done? So that is written over here, error correcting codes. Then we know something called interleaved parity. So RAID 3 follows bit interleaved parity setup, and RAID 4 is block interleaved parity. RAID 5 is block interleaved distributed parity. So now what we supposed to observe is, consider this D, E and F, RAID 3, 4 and 5. All these generally follows parity, nothing but error correcting codes CRC checked. RAID 3 will have only one particular disk which is dedicated for that one. RAID 4 will have the same setup, but with respect to RAID 5, all the disks will have some amount of memory to deal with this particular parity bits. So all these 5 individual disks will have its own space to maintain distributed parity. Then we have something called RAID 6, that is P plus Q redundancy. So it is easily you can differentiate. So in the first 2 disks, we maintain parity bit each separately. Coming to third disk onwards, we have 2 separate format, 2 separate replication PP. This is nothing but is supposed to maintain redundancy as well. So this is in brief about RAID levels. So we discussed RAID 0, there is no redundant, there is no data duplication. RAID 1, there are data duplication, same number of disks will carry same amount of data. RAID 2, will have memory style, error correcting codes, parity bits are kept separately in a separate disk. RAID 3, interleaved parity. So the difference between RAID 3 and RAID 4 is majorly, with respect to RAID 4, we are dealing with blocks. With respect to RAID 3, it is bits. That is only the difference. RAID 5, it is distributed. So if you have any clarification doubt, you can get back to me. So we'll continue. This is another setup, right? 0 plus 1 and 1 plus 0. Please clearly observe. Usually while writing answers in examinations, we people, is a normal human tendency. So we may make use of 0 plus 1. We may argue 0 plus 1 and 1 plus 0 the same. Yes, the end result may be same, but while implementing, both are different. With respect to 0 plus 1, you're supposed to have a copy. Then you are mirroring it. Sorry, you're supposed to have a disk as a group. Then you are going to mirror it. So please refer the first figure A, write 0 plus 1 with a single disk failure. So what happens is, consider first row, stripe X, and just follow this particular arrow mark. So this entire 4 disk will be treated as one bunch or one group. So that is RAID 0. Coming to RAID 1, so we are maintaining a copy of this one. That is RAID 0 plus 1 with single disk failure. So what we are trying to say is, if something fails over here, you can have that particular data from this particular setup. Please follow my cursor. If something goes wrong with the third disk, if third disk fails, automatically the program should fetch those data from the copied or mirrored disk from here. Okay. Now, RAID 1.0 is nothing but we'll have a copy. Please follow my cursor on the screen. So we'll have a copy from this third row to fourth row, individual copy, nothing but we supposed to mirror it, replicate each individual disk separately. Then we are going to group it. That is what 1 plus 0 says. Please follow. RAID 0 plus 1, we'll have a group first, then we are going to mirror it. So coming to RAID 1 plus 0, we'll have a copy individually at first, then we are going to copy it. Still, we have some extensions. It is nothing but RAID on itself should not prevent or may not prevent or may not control the data corruption or some errors or disk failures. So for this particular reason, we need some extra care. So that extra care with respect to Solaris ZFS, which are such checksums for all data and metadata, have error correcting codes. So these checksums will have a pointer to object. So what is that object will have? It will have to detect if object is the right one and whether it has changed. So whether you have correct copy of the data or whether there is any alteration with the data. So it will just monitor in detail, nothing but point by point. It will have an address for every individual data object. And it will detect and correct data and metadata corruption. If something goes wrong, it will automatically detect it and correct it. And it also removes volumes partitions. We'll see volumes and partition what it is later. And disks allocated in pools, in a bunch of pools. So now in general, so yeah, you can observe over here, we have seen malloc free, memory allocated release calls. So this will make use of that. Malloc is memory allocation, disk is allocated in the pool. So once it is done, it should be freed out. So now coming back to volume and partition. Volume is nothing but, so we can have some amount of data in a particular position. So if you're following volume in the sense, if it is a Linux machine, so we can call it as a volume. So in that particular volume, we can show some amount of data. Partition is nothing but a particular part of the disk. Volume, you may call it as entire bunch of data. Partition is some amount of data in general, if you say. So how it works, here you can see a depiction. So we'll have a metadata block. Metadata block is nothing but it is description about the data, what it will has, address and checksum. Please start from the lower level. So we have individual data 1 and data 2. So to maintain this particular data in our RAID, according to ZFS, so it should have a checksum for D1, checksum for D2. So what checksum D1 will do, if the data 1 is altered, checksum will identify it and will rectify it, diagnose it and verify it, and then it will give a solution for that one. Address. So this particular address will have the address of data 1, so that it is easier to trace out where data 1 is available. Same metadata block 2 will have a checksum MB2. Is something like a transitive rule. Data 1, checksum D1, metadata block 2. These are all single package, single group as a volume. From over here, we will have another checksum, then address 1 and metadata block 1. This is how it works. So two levels of security is provided for individual data as Solaris ZFS works. So initially you have a data 1 will have checksum D1, which will have address of it. This is covered with the metadata block 2, and metadata block 2 will have another checksum. So that metadata block 2 will have its own address. So that is covered with metadata block 1. So now if you observe clearly, so we are having same amount of data again over here. That is data duplication with the security. And coming to this one, traditional volume, traditional and pooled storage. So consider this particular diagram, figure A, traditional volumes and file systems. Consider a particular file system which is having n number of volumes. So this volume of data, amount of data stored in number of disks. Coming to ZFS, ZFS provides pool, entire pool. So here you can clear cut definition, differentiation you can see. Entire volume is clubbed together to have a storage pool, large volume. So that large volume is monitored by ZFS. On the other side, storage pool is connected to individual disks. There is only the difference. So please be clear in this particular picture. So with respect to traditional mechanism, you will have individual volumes for individual file system. So with respect to ZFS, we will have a storage pool, large single volume. Then we have something called stable storage implementation. So over here we made use of write ahead log protocol or write ahead log scheme. Something like, so you'll using this algorithm or this scheme, log scheme. So it is easier to identify before writing itself, before going to write the particular data into a memory location by following this particular algorithm. So automatically the control will going to know where you are going to edit it or where you are going to write it or store it. So how to do that? So however, we are starting from, say, from 0th location, 1, 2, 3, 4 and so on. So replication, say if you have a data in 0th position, automatically the next position will have a replication information, nothing but metadata or update information. So that is, so this should happen in a controlled manner. Then we'll have a tertiary storage device. This is low cost. This tertiary storage device, we can give a best example as CD-ROMs, removable disks. Right now in the market, we may familiar with pen drive, SD cards, XD cards, all those. So these are all example for tertiary storage device. You can use it and remove it. And then removable disk, coming to floppy disk, CD, DVD, Blu-ray, all those are removable disks. So where nothing but if you go on through with the floppy disk, it is nothing but as flexible, coated with the magnetic material, which will have a protective plastic sheath or plastic cover as a carry case. So initial days, the floppy was storing about KBs of data. Later, after the advancement in technology, it was came up to 1.4 MB of data. Then the CD is come to picture. It will hold up to starting from 700 MB till 1 GB. Then DVD will have a little bit large amount, around 4 GB or 3.8 GB of the data. Blu-ray up to 8 GB to 10 GB, again based on the manufacturer. So these discs will have magneto-optic disc records, nothing but magnetic sheath or magnetic coating. It will have all those data. So how the data is written and read? So automatically you'll have a laser heat is used to amplify large weak magnetic field into to record a bit. Laser light on the other hand is used to read the data. So if you observe the previous years mouse, say a ball with the ball which uses of that kind of setup. So which is, if you observe, you can it will eliminate this one laser beam or light. So it will made use of LEDs. So after the advancement, LEDs came up, LED mouses. So if you clearly observe the red light below the mouse, it's nothing but its pointer. So where it is, where the mouse pointer is positioned, so that will be known. Similarly, if you can relate that particular part with this reading and writing with the disk. So reading, to read the particular data from the disk, we made use of laser light, and to write into the disk, again we made use of laser heat. Then we have worm disks, write once, read many times, normal CD, not that rewritable. Rewritable not come under worm disks. Worm is nothing but write once and read many times. So for example, for this one we may give CD-ROM, DVD, or already loaded motherboard disks, factory loaded motherboard disk. You cannot write again. So these are the examples for that one. Then tape, magnetic tapes, stackers, silo. So these are all the examples we can give for a different storage. So for this kind of thing, we need operating system jobs to manage these physical devices. For individual hard disks, sub operating system will provide two levels of abstraction: raw device and file system. In general, raw device are nothing but it's array of data block. File system is nothing but based on the operating system. It will queues, schedules, and different requests, interrupts, or several applications are concerned with. Then we have application interface. So this application interface usually provided by the manufacturer or the producer. For example, if you're going to make use of a VLC media player to play or to watch movies, to listen songs, you may need an API, that is say VLC media player. As an example, I'm not the advertiser for that company. So now even that particular application should have a UI interface. So to deal with that particular thing, even all of the OSs should support that particular setup, which is set by the company. So now with that particular individual application, the OS should give us a small handle. So this handle is nothing but an API. So this handle's job is to connect to the application and OS. So this is an example. Similarly, to deal with these disks, tapes, we need an application interface. So we can give another example. For example, pen drive, removable disks. So whenever you insert a disk into your USB, automatically operating system should recognize that disk with the manufacturer, all those things, and it will show you a prompt. In my computer, if it is a Windows, you can see the symbol, the drive symbol, and its name. So this is an interface provided by the OS. So rest of the things you can carry out. Similarly for tape drives. For tape drives, we made use of locate, seek. So these are the built-in functions or system calls we may call in general to identify the particular position. of a logical block. So this particular example we already discussed while discussing disk structure. Same thing. So nothing but system call to identify a particular track, a particular sector, and you're supposed to copy it or you're supposed to read it from that particular disk. Then we have file naming. So this issue of naming files on removable media is especially difficult. So why it is difficult? Because if you are making use of same disks with many machines, if already a particular machine is having same name, same named disk, then it is very difficult to read the file because the OS will find it difficult to trace out where the file is. One thing. Second thing is automatically right now automatically the operating system will recognize the first with the first name, second with the second name. For example, consider a Word document with the same abstract.doc. So if you want to have another copy of that, again abstract.doc within a bracket you will get 2. So that is second. Same thing is affected when we have same name with the different disks. Then we have something called HSM, hierarchical storage management. A hierarchical storage system extends the storage hierarchy. That is level, primary, secondary, tertiary. Examples we already seen. Primary memory, RAM, secondary memory, hard disk, tertiary storage, removable, tape box, tapes, magnetic tapes, pen drive, CD, floppy, DVD, Blu-ray, all this comes under tertiary storage. So now this hierarchical storage management is required when we need to update with our machine. Primary memory will boot up, will trace out your OS and will boot up operating system. Secondary memory is used to store all your files. Tertiary memory, tertiary storage is needed when you wanted to carry a particular file from one location to another location. This is how it works, the hierarchy. That's why we have hierarchical storage management. And coming to the speed, how the speed is calculated with respect to bandwidth is nothing but the average data rate for a data rate is transmitted for a particular period of time. Nothing but bytes per transfer time. That is bandwidth. Then we have something called another term effective bandwidth. This is nothing but average. For example, for throughout a day, you can calculate average bandwidth, effective bandwidth using seek and locate, including that one. Then we have something called latency, the delay in transmission, the delay in reading a file, delay in writing into a file. These are all comes under latency. So the latency is concerned with again based on your system and the speed at which the disk will operate, the speed at which your motherboard will operate, there is clock speed. So these are the things will have its own value, its own effect in this in deciding latency. Then reliability is concerned with a fixed disk drive is likely to be more reliable than a removable disk because it's very prone to accident if you are carrying your disk. If something happens, if you drop your disk, then you can imagine what will happen, right? So that's why it's better to have a fixed disk drive, in your machine. This is coming to the secondary disk in your machine. And then instead of having a magnetic disk or magnetic tape nowadays in the market, it's not there, not at all visible. So you can have an optical cartridge, and you can have your data crash or head crash or fixed hard disk is crash. It will destroys everything. But with respect to tape drive, it will leave you the particular inner cartridge will be unharmed. Coming to the cost, main memory is much more expensive than disk storage, and cost per megabyte of hard disk storage is competitive. So coming to the cost, so right now in the market, the advancement of technology, because of advancement of technology, even SSD can be uh, purchasable, or it's available in a little bit lesser amount, say for 500 GB of solid state SSD, you may supposed to pay around 6 to 7,000 in today's market, right? So, so these are all come to picture when you buy these hard disks or different disks. Even again coming to tertiary storage, you'll get 16 GB pen drive for around 200 rupees, right? So this is the because of the advancement in technology. So you can see this small graph. This is copied from operating system by Silberschatz's. Over here, if you observe, this particular graph is drawn in 2004. So now we are in 2020. See the difference. So with respect to in 2004, 512 MB was, we are getting around for 0.8. That is price per megabyte. So see the difference. So there is a huge advancement in technology, so that we are getting in lesser price more number of disk drives, tertiary drives, secondary memory and primary memory as well. So that completes the first part of the module 5 of operating system. So if you have any clarification or doubt, please get back to me. We'll discuss in next class. Thank you. Have a nice day.